सो फ्रेंड्स, अब बात करते हैं एग्जामिनेशन ऑफ हाइपरथायराइड पेशेंट। सो आज हम बात करेंगे हाइपरथायराइडिज्म की एग्जामिनेशन के बारे में। सबसे पहले क्वेश्चन आता है, एग्जामिनर पूछता है व्हाट आर द कॉमन कॉजेज ऑफ हाइपरथायराइडिज्म। इसके बारे में आपको पता होना चाहिए कॉमन कॉजेज क्या क्या होते हैं हाइपरथायराइडिज्म के। तो सबसे आपने पहले बोलना है कि ग्रेव्स डिजीज होता है। ग्रेव्स डिजीज ग्रेव्स डिजीज में होता है डिफ्यूज टॉक्सिक गोइटर होता है एंड इट इज द कॉमनेस्ट कॉज ऑफ थायरोटॉक्सिकोसिस। उसके बाद कॉजेज ऑफ थायरोटॉक्सिकोसिस या फिर हाइपरथायरिज्म में आता है सॉलिटरी टॉक्सिक नड्यूल। देन उसके बाद आता है टॉक्सिक मल्टीनोडुलर ग्वाइटर। इसके अलावा और कॉजेज आता है जैसे सब एक्यूट थायराइडाइटिस। और लास्ट में आता है टीएसएच प्रोड्यूसिंग पिचुरी एडिनोमा। तो ये कुछ कॉमन कॉजेज होते हैं जो थायरोटॉक्सिकोसिस के कॉमन कॉजेज में ग्रेव्स डिजीज आता है, सॉलिटरी टॉक्सिक नोड्यूल आता है, टॉक्सिक मल्टीनोडल गोइटर आता है, सब एक्यूट थायराइडाइटिस आता है और पिचडी एडिनोमा होता है। तो इसको आपने याद में रखना है। तो ग्रेव्स डिजीज, सॉलिटरी टॉक्सिक नोड्यूल, टॉक्सिक मल्टीनोडुलर गोइटर, सब एक्यूट थायराइडाइटिस एंड पिचडी एडिनोमा, टीएसएच प्रोड्यूसिंग पिचडी एडिनोमा। अब इसके बाद क्वेश्चन आता है हाउ विल यू कंफर्म द नेक्स्ट स्वेलिंग एज गोइटर। ओके, तो नेक्स्ट स्वेलिंग जो है वो गोइटर है, उसके लिए आपको कैसे कंफर्म करना है। So you will ask the patient to swallow. You will ask the patient to swallow and note whether the swelling moves upwards on swelling. Because of its attachment with the larynx, you have to ask the patient to swallow and you have to note the swelling moves upwards on swallowing because of the attachment to the larynx. Next swellings which move upwards on swallowing are thyroid, thyroglossal cyst, subhyoid bursitis, pretracheal prelaryngeal lymph node fixed to the trachea and larynx respectively. Thyroglossal cyst also moves upwards with the protrusion of the tongue. कौन कौन सी स्वेलिंग होती है जो swallowing पे अपवर्ड मूवमेंट करती है, इसको याद रखना है। एक तो अगर स्वेलिंग थायराइड से आ रही है वो अपवर्ड मूव करेगी। इसके अलावा थायरोग्लॉसल सिस्ट, इसके अलावा सब हायार्ड बर्साइटस, ये भी अप मूव करेगी विद swallowing। इसके अलावा प्री ट्रेकियल एंड pre-laryngeal lymph nodes which are attached to the larynx. Pretracheal and pre-laryngeal lymph nodes, they will also move upward with swallowing. So thyroid swelling, thyroglossal cyst, subhyoid bursitis, pretracheal and pre-laryngeal lymph nodes, they move upwards while swallowing. Then what is the normal weight of the thyroid gland? You should know it is about 20 to 25 gram. It is the normal weight of the thyroid gland. Then comes to the examination of thyroid. How will you do the examination of the thyroid? So first of all inspection होता है. First of all there will be inspection. So you will do the inspection of the neck. You will note the position of the swelling, diffuse or localized nature of the swelling, position, diffuse or localized nature of the swelling, then the extent of the swelling, then the shape of the swelling, then size of the swelling, then overlying skin. On the overlying skin you will see any dilated veins, any thyroidectomy scar, any local signs of inflammation of the swelling is there or not. Then overlying skin which is present in the neck. As the thyroid swelling moves upwards on swallowing, spontaneous swelling may give a glass of water to swallow. Look for the inferior border as soon as the gland moves upwards. You will give a glass of water to patient to drink, and as the patient drinks, the thyroid swelling move upwards, and you will feel the inferior border as the gland moves upwards. So on inspection, you will note the position of the swelling, whether it is localized swelling, what is the extent of the swelling, what is the shape, what is the size of the swelling, and overlying skin like dilated veins, thyroidectomy scar, localized signs of inflammation. As the thyroid swelling moves upwards on swelling, you can give the glass of water to swallow and look for the inferior border of the gland. As soon as the swelling moves upwards or the gland moves upwards, you will see the inferior border of the thyroid gland. This is about the inspection. Then comes to the palpation part. Palpation of the thyroid gland. There are two methods. You can either do from behind and you can also do from the front. So palpation from the behind. At first, the palpation of the thyroid gland should always be done from the behind. First, you should always do the examination from the behind on a sitting patient by using both the hands, especially using the palms of the fingers with slight flexion of the neck. Why do flex the neck? To relax the sternocleidomastoid muscles, and you place the thumb over the nape of the neck. Then you will note the shape, size, consistency, mobility, extra for the thyroid gland. Palpate the lateral lobes and isthmus. So first palpation should be done from the behind. At first, the palpation of thyroid gland should always be done from the behind on a sitting position by using both the hands, especially the palms of the fingers, with slight flexion of the neck to relax the sternomastoid muscles, and thumbs placed over the nape of the neck. You have to note the size, shape, consistency, and mobility. Palpate the lateral lobes and the isthmus of the thyroid gland. Now we'll do the palpation from front. What you will do the front, you will expose the neck properly and extend the neck slightly. You have to expose the neck properly and extend the neck slightly. Often each lobe of the thyroid gland is better palpated from the front by Lahaye's method. So what is the method is Lahaye's method. You will feel the each lobe. Then for palpation of the right lobe, the gland is pushed to the right from the left side. The right lobe becomes more prominent and now palpated by the left hand. Henceforth, the following points are noted carefully while examining from the front. You will note the size, whether it is small or large. Then the shape, whether it is localized swelling or diffuse swelling, or whether it is single swelling or multiple swelling. Then surface, whether it is smooth surface or irregular surface. Then consistency, the different consistencies are soft, normal gland can be soft, as well as in Graves disease the gland is soft. Then firm swelling is seen in simple goiter, and if it is hard it is seen in the carcinoma of the thyroid, and woody feel is seen in Riddle's thyroiditis, and a cystic swelling may indicate a solid one or a cystic lesion. A cystic swelling may feel solid and a solid one may feel cystic lesion. You have to remember this. A cystic may feel swelling may feel solid, or a solid swelling may feel cystic. So what are the things on consistency you will, what are the things you will know? Look by Lahaye's method. You will note the whether the size of the swelling is small or large, whether the localized swelling or diffuse swelling, whether nodular or not, whether the surface is smooth or irregular. Then consistency, if it is soft it could be normal, or it could be Graves disease. In Graves and normal there is soft consistency, and if the swelling is firm it could be simple goiter. If it is hard it could be carcinoma of the thyroid, and if it is woody feel it is, could be Riddle's thyroiditis. A cystic swelling may appear as solid, or solid may appear as cystic. Then you also note the temperature. The temperature will be warm to feel in Graves disease. Graves disease may temperature will be warm. In Graves disease the temperature will be warm. Then you will note, to get below the swelling, ask the patient to swallow again to test the possibility of retrosternal extension. To get below the swelling, you should know to whether you are able to get below the swelling. Ask the patient to swallow again and test the possibility of retrosternal extension. Then mobility, whether it is fixed or mobile, the gland is moved horizontally and vertically. The gland is moved horizontally and vertically. Mobility is lost in carcinoma of the thyroid with infiltration. The mobility will be lost in carcinoma of the thyroid and with infiltration. Then you will note the tenderness. Then you will note the tenderness, whether tender is there. In tender swelling you seen in thyroiditis, malignancy, bleeding within the cyst. So where you get it, tender thyroid swelling, thyroiditis, malignancy, and bleeding within the cyst. Then relationship with the neighboring structure, you will know whether trachea is deviated or not. Then you will see the carotid sheet. Carotid pulsation is increased in Graves disease, whereas pulsations may not be felt in patients with thyroid carcinoma. So if you are getting the carotid pulsation increase in Graves disease, whereas the pulsations may not be felt in a patient with thyroid carcinoma. Then esophagus, for esophagus there will be history of there will be complaint of dysphagia. Then if the crinolaryngeal nerve is compressed, there may produce hoarseness of the voice. Then if sympathetic trunk is involved, it may produce Horner syndrome, in which patient having this ptosis, meiosis, anhydrosis of the ipsilateral phase, and anophthalmosis. So what are the features of Horner syndrome? There will be pseudoptosis, meiosis, anhydrosis of the ipsilateral phase, and anophthalmosis. Remember, there occur the pseudotosis in Horner syndrome, then meiosis, anhydrosis of the ipsilateral phase, then anophthalmosis. Then sternocleidomastoid muscle, test the function, as malignancy may infiltrate this muscle. You have to test the sternocleidomastoid muscles. Then skin and the subcutaneous tissue you have to see. This is the relation with the nerving structure. Then you will see the thrill present over the thyroid gland. It is present in Graves' disease due to increased vascularity. So if you are getting thrill over the thyroid gland, it is seen in Graves' disease due to thyroid increased vascularity. Then palpate the cervical nodes from behind. So this, then we will do the percussion. Though not very helpful, percussion of the sternum may be done to detect the presence of retrosternal goiter. So sternal percussion is used in retrosternal goiter. Then changing the percussion note from resonant to dull indicates the possibility of retrosternal goiter. If the note is getting changed from the resonant to dull note, indicates the possibility of retrosternal goiter. Then auscultation search for systolic bruit over the lateral lobes of the thyroid gland present in Graves' disease due to increased vascularity. So you have to look for systolic bruit over the lateral lobes of thyroid gland which is present in Graves' disease due to increased vascularity. Ask the patient to hold his breath and then auscultate. You have to ask the patient to hold his breath and then you have to auscultate for the bruit. Presence of systolic bruit in the thyroid gland may be confused with carotid bruit or venous hump. So thyroid bruit can be confused with carotid bruit or venous hump. Then you will do the measurement of the circumference of the neck by a tape at the most prominent part. The isthmus which lies in front of the second, third and fourth tracheal rings is better palpated from the front. So isthmus which lies over the second, third and fourth tracheal rings is better palpated from the front. From above downwards in the midline there are thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage and isthmus. From above downward we have the thyroid cartilage, then cricoid cartilage and lastly we have the isthmus. We have first the thyroid cartilage, then we have the cricoid cartilage, then we have the isthmus. This is from above downward in the neck. Then thyroid bruit. About thyroid bruit more prominent in the upper part of the neck than the lower part, as superior thyroid artery arises from the external carotid artery. So thyroid bruit is more prominent in the upper part of the neck. Carotid bruit obviously more prominent in the lower part of the neck over common carotid artery. So carotid bruit over the common carotid artery and it is in the lower part of the neck, whereas thyroid bruit is in the upper part of the neck and it arises from the superior thyroid artery from the external carotid artery. Venous hump disappears on gentle pressure applied over the base of the neck. So venous hump will disappear as we apply the gentle pressure over the neck. The thyroid bruit is always pathognomic of Graves' disease. It is always pathognomic of Graves' disease. So thyroid bruit is always pathognomic of Graves' disease. So thyroid bruit is always pathognomic of Graves' disease. Then hyperthyroidism is often associated with goiter, whether it is diffuse or nodular. Hyperthyroidism is always associated with goiter. Then cervical lymph node should always be palpated to exclude metastasis from the thyroid carcinoma. So cervical lymph node should always be palpated to exclude metastasis from the thyroid carcinoma. Now we'll discuss about what is Pemberton sign. Pemberton sign, you will ask the patient to raise the arms above the shoulder until they touch both the ears and to keep them in that position for more than 1 minute. You have to ask him to raise the hand for more than 1 minute above the shoulder. Then as the patient do this, he will suffer the facial congestion, that is plethora will be there, then central cyanosis will appear, respiratory distress with stridor and venous congestion of the neck occurs in the patient with retrosternal goiter and is known as the Pemberton sign. It is due to the obstruction of the great vessel by pressure effects of the retrosternal goiter on arm raising at thoracic inlet. This test should not be done routinely. So what happens, you will ask the patient to raise the arm over the shoulder for a period of more than 1 minute, and then you will look for central cyanosis, then you will look for plethora, respiratory distress with stridor and venous congestion of the neck, and it is occurring in a retrosternal goiter and is known as Pemberton sign, and it is due to the obstruction of the great vessels by pressure effects of the retrosternal goiter by arm raising. It is due to the obstruction of the great vessels. So what happens in Pemberton sign? There is obstruction of great vessels in a case of retrosternal goiter. Then why do you say it is Graves disease? Examiner can ask question, why do you say it's a Graves disease? Why it is Graves disease? Then you will say, sir, as there is presence of exophthalmosis and diffuse goiter, it is Graves disease. As there is present of exophthalmosis and diffuse goiter, so it is a case of Graves disease. As there is presence of exophthalmosis and diffuse goiter, it is a patient of Graves disease. The examination findings, for example, the thyroid gland is diffusely enlarged, measuring 8.5 to 8.5 centimeter. Left lobe is a bit larger than the right lobe. Isthmus is not palpable. The gland is soft, non-tender, freely mobile with smooth surface, not fixed to the underlying structure or overlying skin. There is no lymphadenopathy, no retrosternal extension, but there is carotid bruit over the left lobe. So you will say the examination finding are that the gland is enlarged, measuring 8.5 to 8.5 centimeter. Left lobe is a bit larger than the right. Left lobe is a bit larger than the right, and you will say isthmus is not palpable. The gland is soft, non-tender, freely mobile with smooth surface, and not fixed to the underlying structure or overlying skin. There is no lymphadenopathy, no retrosternal extension, but there is carotid bruit felt over the left lobe. Then, what is simple diffuse goiter? The examiner can ask, what is simple diffuse goiter? What is simple diffuse goiter? It is goiter with no signs of toxicosis. It is simple goiter with no signs of toxicosis, and the causes for simple diffuse goiter is iodine deficiency, puberty goiter, use of goitrogens drugs like amiodarone, lithium, para-amino-salicylic acid, and vegetables like cabbage, cauliflower, turnips. So what is the simple diffuse goiter? It is simple goiter without any features of without any signs of toxicosis, and the causes are iodine deficiency. Puberty goiter, so causes of simple diffuse goiter is iodine deficiency, puberty goiter, then use of goitrogenic drugs like lithium, amiodarone, para-amino-salicylic acid, and vegetable like cabbage, cauliflower, turnip, turnip. So so it is a simple goiter with no features of toxicosis and is seen commonly in iodine deficiency, puberty goiter, and use of goitrogen drugs like lithium, myodrone, para-amino-salicylic acid, and the vegetables like cabbage, cauliflower, turnips. Then what are the features of ophthalmopathy and dermopathy in Graves disease? Graves disease characterized by, we will now look for dermopathy and ophthalmopathy. Ophthalmopathy and dermopathy in a case of Graves disease. Graves disease is characterized by classical triad or diffuse goiter, ophthalmopathy, and dermopathy. So if you will add diffuse goiter with ophthalmopathy with dermopathy, this is a triad which you will see in a patient of Graves disease. So what are the ophthalmopathic features? We will discuss this in a chapter of exophthalmosis. So there will be exophthalmosis. We will have a separate chapter on exophthalmosis. Then cutaneous manifestation of uh, Graves disease, that is dermopathy. We will now see. Let's take the dermopathy. So what are the features of dermopathy in a Graves disease? So dermopathy, you will first check the skin. Skin will be warm, it will be hyperhidrotic or moist, hand will be there due to cutaneous vasodilation. Palmar erythema will be there, rarely spuder nevi, and malar flush you can get in Graves disease. So what are the features on the skin? Skin will be warm, it will be hyperhidrotic, it will be moist, there will be palmar erythema. Moist occur because of the cutaneous vasodilation. So what are the skin manifestation in dermopathy of Graves disease? It will be warm, it will be moist, there will be palmar erythema or sometimes Spader nevi and malar flush you can get. This is about the skin features. Then hair can be about hair can be friable hair, and silky and alopecia can occur. Alopecia can, you can see alopecia, friable, silky, alopecia. Hair will be friable, fine and silky. It should be fine and silky, fine and silky hair, fine and silky hair, and alopecia will be there. Then in the nails, there will be separation of the distal margin of the nail from its nail bed, that is the plumber's nail. So about the nail, there will be separation of the distal margin of the nail from its nail bed, and it is known as the plumber's nail. Plumber's nail, seen in Graves' disease. Then pretibial myxedema, the affected area bilateral over the shin is raised, thickened, hyperpigmented, and indurated plaque with purdy orange appearance along the growth of the coarse hair. There is non-petic edema over the shins. So you can get the pretibial myxedema. You will get the pretibial myxedema, which is seen bilaterally over the shin, and the skin of the shin becomes raised. It will be raised. It will be thickened. It will be hyperpigmented, and indurated plaque with purely orange appearance will be there along the growth of the coarse hair. There is non-petic edema over the shins. Then pigmentation, you can get either hyper or hypopigmentation like vitiligo in the thyroid in Graves' disease. Then thyroid arthropathy is the clubbing and swollen fingers with bony changes. Clubbing and swollen fingers with bony changes resembling hypertrophic osteoarthropathy may accompany the dermal changes in the distal extremities. So you can get also thyroid arthropathy. This is very important. Thyroid arthropathy. What is thyroid arthropathy? The examiner can ask what is thyroid arthropathy. Then you will say that there is clubbing and swollen fingers with bony changes that resembles the, basically what happens in thyroid arthropathy, there will be and swollen fingers clubbing and swollen fingers with bony changes clubbing and swollen fingers with bony changes which resembles the hypertrophic osteoarthropathy. So there will be clubbing and swollen fingers with bony changes resembling the hypertrophic osteoarthropathy. Then this is about the skin manifestation of Graves' disease. Then what are the physical findings in the cardiovascular system in a patient with Graves' disease? We'll discuss now the cardiovascular features of Graves' disease. So first of all, we will take the pulse. In the pulse, there will be tachycardia persists even when the patient is sleeping. High sleeping pulse rate, very important. High sleeping pulse rate will be there in thyroid or Graves' disease. Then high volume pulse, also known as the water hammer pulse, is characteristic due to wide pulse pressure, and you can also get the capillary pulsation. So water hammer pulse with wide pulse pressure, wide pulse pressure, high volume collapsing pulse, which may be a water hammer pulse in character. Then atrial fibrillation, irregular pulse you can get, and then you can get ectopics. Then carotid dance you can get, and the suprasternal pulsations due to the hyperkinetic circulatory state. Other points in pulse is usually within normal limit. So you will get the high sleeping pulse rate, water hammer pulse, then atrial fibrillation and ectopics you can get. Then carotid dance and suprasternal pulsations you will get. Other points is usually within normal limit. Then signs of congestive cardiac failure will be there, like high output failure and often refractory may be present. There may be worsening of angina or heart failure in the elderly due to high cardiac output. So the features of CCF will be there. There will be high cardiac output failure. And there will be worsening angina worsening angina may be there due to high output failure. Then in examination of the heart, you will find the apex will be hyperdynamic and present in normal position. So in thyrotoxicosis, apex will be hyperdynamic and will be in normal position. Then S1 and P2 may be loud due to tachycardia. S1 and P2 will be loud due to tachycardia. Loud S1 and P2 will be loud due to tachycardia. Then S1 and P2 will be loud due to tachycardia. Then murmur, you will get the systolic murmur at the apex due to increased blood flow. You will get the systolic murmur at the apex due to increased blood flow. You will get the systolic murmur at the apex. Systolic murmur at the apex due to increased blood flow. You will get the systolic murmur at apex due to increased blood flow. Then what is means Lerman scratch? This is important, or you have to note it down, very very important. What is means Lerman scratch? What is means Lerman scratch? To and fro scratchy sound is heard in the pulmonary area in the mid-systole, possibly due to rubbing of the pleura and the pericardium as a result of hyperkinetic circulatory state mimicking the pericardial rub. It is rarely found. Mean Lerman scratch is basically the to and fro scratchy sound. It is to and fro scratchy sound heard over the it is heard over the pulmonary area. To and fro scratchy sound heard over the pulmonary area and is heard in the mid-systole, possibly due to the rubbing of the pleura and the pericardium as a result of hyperkinetic circulatory state. So what happens in thyrotoxicosis? There is a hyperkinetic circulatory state, there is rubbing of the pleura and the pericardium, as a result of which to and fro scratchy sound is produced, which is heard over the pulmonary area in the mid-systole. It is just mimics the pericardial rub and it is rarely found. So means Lerner scratch. Common symptoms related to cardiovascular system are palpitation with spatting, angina pectoris, dyspnea due to CCF. Sleeping pulse rate is important to determine the severity of thyrotoxicosis. So these things you have to remember. Then we'll discuss about the GI manifestation of Graves' disease. GI manifestation of Graves' disease. So what are the GI manifestation of Graves' disease? There will be loss of weight in spite of increased appetite. There will be weight loss despite of increased appetite. Then you will see there will be hyperdefecation, there will be diarrhea, there will be steatorrhea, there will be hyperdefecation, there will be diarrhea, there will be steatorrhea, then vomiting can be there. The patient may present with weight loss, increased appetite, irritability, heat intolerance, tremors, hyperkinesia, palpitations, increased sweating, exophthalmosis. So these features you have to remember. So what are the features? Weight loss, increased appetite, irritability, heat intolerance, tremors, hyperkinesia, palpitation, increased sweating, or exophthalmosis. The cardinal signs of Graves' disease. Cardinal sign of Graves' disease. What are the cardinal signs of Graves' disease? So cardinal signs of Graves' disease are tachycardia, tremors, and exophthalmosis. Tachycardia, tremors, and exophthalmosis is the cardinal signs. Examine these three signs in all the patients with hyperthyroidism. So you have to see the tachycardia, you have to see the tremors, and you have to see the exophthalmosis. These are the cardinal signs of the Graves' disease. Now we'll discuss about the phases in Graves' disease. Phases in thyrotoxicosis. So what are the phases in thyrotoxicosis? Better known as the stare, anxious, startled look due to lid retraction. Stare, anxious, startled look due to lid retraction, agitated or terror face, exophthalmosis, and other eye changes like infrequent blinking may be noted. Moist facial skin with malar flush is sometimes seen and may be associated with goiter in the neck. So what are the feces? There will be stare, anxious, startled look. It will be stared, anxious, startled look, startled look, stare, anxious, startled look due to lid retraction. There will be exophthalmosis and other eye changes like infrequent blinking will be there. There will be exophthalmosis, infrequent eye blinking will be there. There will be moist facial skin with malar flush is sometimes seen, and it may be associated with goiter in the neck. So the moist facial skin with the malar flush is sometimes seen. Moist facial moist facial skin with malar flush. Malar flush can sometimes be seen. So staring look, anxious look, startled look with literally due to lid retraction, moist facial skin, malar flush. These are the features seen in the thyrotoxicosis phases. Then clinical features regarding the involvement of the nervous system. So what are the features if the brain gets involved in a patient with Graves' disease? There will be insomnia, there will be nervousness, there will be emotional liability, and there will be hyper irritability, perspiration, hyperkinesia, depression, mania, psychosis, difficulty in rising from the squatting position or climbing stairs due to proximal muscle weakness. There may be stupor or coma can be seen when the patient is having the thyroid storm. So what are the nervous system features? There will be insomnia, nervousness, emotional liability, irritability, perspiration, hyperkinesia, depression, mania, psychosis, hyperkinesia, difficulty in rising from the squatting position, climbing upstairs, stupor, coma, thyroid storm. The features will be there. Insomnia, irritability, emotional liability, emotional liability, then irritability, hyperkinesia. These features you have to know. Then what are the signs of a nervous system? There will be fine tremor. Most prominent feature is the fine tremor. These are the signs of nervous system. There will be fine tremor tested in outstretched hands and in protruded tongue. The tremor is checked in outstretched hands and protruded tongue. In severe cases the whole body may be shaking and trembling. In the severe cases, the whole body may be shaking and trembling. Proximal muscle weakness and wasting will be there, and it is called as thyroid myopathy. So, what are the signs of thyrotoxicosis? There will be fine tremor. There will be thyroid myopathy. There will be thyroid myopathy. then, then myasthenic syndromes and hypokalemic periodic paralysis may occur. Myasthenic syndrome and hypokalemic periodic paralysis may occur. There will be chorea. Deep reflexes jerks are exaggerated in Graves' disease. Pseudoclonus or ill-sustained clonus may be present in thyrotoxicosis. Plantar response may be flexion. So what are the other things? There will be what happens to the DTR? It will be exaggerated. What happens to the plantar response? It will be flexor, and there will be pseudoclonus will be there. Then there will be chorea, myasthenic syndrome, hypokalemic periodic paralysis. There will be chorea. There will be myasthenic syndrome can be there. So these are the signs of Graves' disease. There will be fine tremors, thyroid myopathy, deep tendon reflexes will be exaggerated, plantar response will be flexor. There will be myasthenic syndrome. There will be hypokalemic periodic paralysis. Then there will be chorea, and there will be pseudoclonus. Then what is apathic thyrotoxicosis? What is apathic thyrotoxicosis? Apathetic thyrotoxicosis. What is apathetic thyrotoxicosis? Apathetic thyrotoxicosis is seen in elderly patients present with features more like hypothyroidism. They have very few signs like fatigue and weight loss. Diagnosis needs high index of suspicion. So what is apathetic thyrotoxicosis? Some elderly patients present with features more like hypothyroidism. They have very few signs like fatigue and weight loss. Diagnosis needs high index of suspicion. So what is apathetic thyrotoxicosis? The features of hyperthyroidism is very less, like fatigue, weight loss. Very few signs will be there, and they are having signs more that like of a hypothyroidism, that is apathetic thyrotoxicosis. Now comes the question, what are the differential diagnoses of thyrotoxicosis? What are the differential diagnoses of thyrotoxicosis? Question can come in this way. So anxiety neurosis is the commonest differential diagnosis, having tremors in both. So anxiety neurosis is the commonest diagnosis. So you have to differentiate thyrotoxicosis from anxiety neurosis. This is anxiety neurosis and this is the thyrotoxicosis. You should know their differences, because anxiety neurosis is the commonest differential of thyrotoxicosis. So what happens to appetite in thyrotoxicosis? It will be increased in thyrotoxicosis, while it will be decreased in neurotic. In anxiety neurosis it will be decreased. It will be decreased in anxiety neurosis. So what happens to the hand in thyrotoxicosis? In thyrotoxicosis, hand will be warm and moist, warm and moist, while in anxiety neurosis the hand will be moist but it will be cold. Cold and moist hand you get in anxiety neurosis, cold and moist, while in thyrotoxicosis it will be warm and moist. Then about the sleeping pulse rate will be normal. Sleeping pulse rate will be normal in anxiety neurosis, while it will be raised in thyrotoxicosis. It will be raised in thyrotoxicosis. Sleeping pulse will be raised in thyrotoxicosis. Sleeping pulse will be raised in thyrotoxicosis. Then about this, pulse pressure will be normal. Pulse pressure will be normal in anxiety neurosis, while it will be increased in thyrotoxicosis. Then goiter is not present in goiter will be absent in anxiety neurosis, while it will be present in thyrotoxicosis. Then about the eye signs will be absent in anxiety neurosis, while it will be present in thyrotoxicosis. So we'll repeat again, what are the features of anxiety neurosis and thyrotoxicosis? First is about the appetite. Appetite will be reduced in anxiety neurosis, while it will be increased in thyrotoxicosis. Then about the hand will be cold and moist in anxiety neurosis, while it will be warm and moist in thyrotoxicosis. Then about the sleeping pulse rate will be normal in anxiety neurosis, while it will be increased sleeping pulse rate in thyrotoxicosis. Then about the pulse pressure will be normal in anxiety neurosis, while it will be pulse pressure will be more in thyrotoxicosis. Then goiter will be absent in anxiety neurosis, while goiter will be present in thyrotoxicosis. Then about this eye signs will be absent in anxiety neurosis, while it will be present in thyrotoxicosis. Other condition where there is rapid weight loss, we will discuss now that other condition where there is rapid weight loss includes the diabetes mellitus, weight loss. Other condition of weight loss includes the diabetes mellitus, tuberculosis, malabsorption syndrome, malignancies, pheochromocytoma, and AIDS. So other condition there is weight loss, diabetics, tuberculosis, malabsorption syndrome, malignancies, pheochromocytoma, and AIDS patient. So other conditions, chronic alcoholism can have tremor, tachycardia, sweating, emotional liability in alcoholism may resemble thyrotoxicosis. So chronic alcoholism can also be the differentials of thyrotoxicosis, like because in chronic alcoholism there will be tremor, there will be tachycardia, there will be sweating, there will be emotional liability, and these are the things you have to know. So these can become the differentials of thyrotoxicosis. Then other differentials of thyrotoxicosis includes the chronic alcoholism. Chronic alcoholism can be the differentials. Then we know anxiety neurosis, we already discussed. Then other causes of weight loss, whatever the causes we discussed, like tuberculosis, diabetes, malabsorption, malignancy, pheochromocytoma, AIDS. These are all the differential diagnoses of thyrotoxicosis. Now we'll discuss the examination of the neck in clinical medicine. Examination of the neck in clinical medicine. We will now discuss the neck examination in clinical medicine. So swelling like brachial cyst, sternomastoid tumor, cystic hygroma, carotid body tumor, Ludwig's angina, dermoid cyst are of surgical interest. So what are the swellings in the neck which are of surgical interest? Brachial cyst, sternomastoid tumor, cystic hygroma, carotid body tumor, Ludwig's angina, dermoid cyst. Then skin over the neck we will see for scar, old tracheostomy mask, signs of inflammation, fistulas, sinuses, actinomycosis, tinea versicolor, pityriasis versicolor, Casel's neck collar, acanthosis nigricans indicates insulin-resistant diabetes, vitiligo autoimmune disorder, acro acrocordons. These are the things you have to look on the skin. So what are the things you are look on the skin? You will see the scar in the skin of the neck. You will see the scar. What are the scar? That is the tracheostomy mark. Tracheostomy mark will be seen. Then in the skin you will see the signs of inflammation, any sinuses, any Casel's collar you will see on the neck, Casel's collar. Then acanthosis nigricans, sign of insulin resistance, acanthosis nigricans, inflammation, sinuses. Then tracheostomy mark, these things you have to look on the skin. Then enlargement of the thyroid gland we will discuss. Lymph nodes on the neck you will see, salivary glands on the neck you will see, neck vessel you will see. Then examination of the trachea, tracheal tug, neck rigidity. Short neck associated with low hairline is found in craniovertebral anomaly. For example, platybasia, Klippel-Feil anomaly. So what are the craniovertebral anomaly? You know, craniovertebral anomaly includes the platybasia, platybasia, platybasia and Klippel-Feil anomaly. Klippel-Feil anomaly. So short neck you will see with short hairline, you will see in craniovertebral anomaly like platybasia, Klippel-Feil anomaly. Then greater auricular nerve thickened in tuberculoid leprosy. By turning the head to the opposite side, the nerve stands out. So greater auricular nerve you will see in the neck, it will be thickened in tuberculoid leprosy. By turning the head to the opposite side, the nerve stands out. Then spasmodic torticollis and other movement abnormalities like tics you will see in the neck. Then buffalo hump, especially in Cushing syndrome you will see buffalo hump you will see in Cushing. Then you will see the suprasternal pulsations, carotid dance, webbing of the neck is seen in the Turner syndrome. Web neck you will see in the Turner syndrome. Buffalo hump you will see in the Cushing syndrome. Then swelling of the neck in conditions like superior vena cava obstruction, subcutaneous emphysema. Bull neck you will see in the malignant diphtheria. Bull neck you will see in malignant diphtheria. So remember this word as bull neck. Bull neck you will see in malignant diphtheria. Bull neck you will see in malignant diphtheria. Then deglutination to confirm a thyroid swelling. Deglutination for confirming the thyroid swelling. Then power testing of the neck muscles, sternomastoids, wasting of the sternomastoid muscles. These are discussed separately. You will see the power in the sternomastoid and the wasting of the sternomastoid in myotonica dystrophica. Myotonic dystrophy, you will find the wasting of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So they can ask the question, where do you find the wasting of the sternomastoid muscle? You will say sternomastoid muscle wasting is seen in myotonic dystrophy. You will see the wasting of the sternomastoid muscle. Then restriction of the neck movements along with pain, flexion, extension, rotation, side bearing occur in cervical spondylosis, ankylosing spondylitis, atlantoaxial dislocation. So they can ask what are the condition in which the neck movement is restricted, or there will be painful neck movements. You will see the painful neck movements. You will see it in conditions like you have this cervical spondylosis, cervical spondylosis, then ankylosing spondylitis, ankylosing spondylitis, then atlantoaxial dislocation, cervical spondylosis, ankylosing spondylitis, then atlantoaxial dislocation. In this condition, you will get the painful neck movement. So, what are the conditions which get the painful neck movement? Cervical spondylosis, ankylosing spondylitis, atlantoaxial dislocation. There will be painful neck movement. Cervical spondylosis, ankylosing spondylitis, atlantoaxial dislocation. Painful neck movements will be there. Then what is ciliospinal reflex? You should know ciliospinal reflex. Then auscultation for thyroid bruit, carotid bruit, and venous hum. Auscultation over the trachea. These are the things you have to see. Thyroid bruit, carotid bruit, venous hum, and auscultation over the trachea. Then first palpate the back and sides of the neck, which are better palpated from the front. Then patient is allowed to sit on a stool and examination palpation is carried out from behind. First palpate the back and the neck. First palpate the back and sides of the neck, which are better palpated from the front, and then the patient is allowed to sit on a stool and examination carried out from behind. So now comes the mention the investigation you like to perform in hyperthyroidism patient. What are the investigations you like to perform in a patient of hyperthyroidism? First of all, I will like to do the serum T3 and T4. Free and total both are increased. TSH is very low, less than 0.05 microunit per ml, are undetectable in hyperthyroidism. Radioactive iodine 131 and 132 uptake is increased. Then resin T3 uptake is increased. Then free thyrotoxin index is increased. What is free thyrotoxin index? It is serum T4 multiplied by resin T3. So it will be increased. Then T3 suppression test. After the administration of T4, the iodine uptake is not suppressed. Then serum TSH level after TRH administration, blunted response, very helpful test. Then ECG shows sinus tachycardia, ectopics, and atrial fibrillation. Then radionuclide scan done by technetium-99 scan, which allows the localized or generalized increased uptake. It is useful in suspected cases of functioning thyroid nodule. You adjust the neck to see single, multinodular, or diffuse goiter. Other investigation like anti-thyroglobulin antibodies will be raised, also elevated in Hashimoto thyroiditis. Basal metabolic rate is increased. Normal basal metabolic rate is 40 kilocalorie per square meter or body surface area per hour. It is 40 calorie per meter square of body surface area per hour. This is the normal basal metabolic rate in males, that is 40. Then serum PBI is increased. Then low serum cholesterol will be there, then serum LATS antibody, long acting thyroid stimulating antibody, is increased in the serum, not routinely used. Antibodies against the thyroperoxidase enzyme and thyroglobulin are present in most cases of Graves' disease. Antibodies against the TPO, yani thyroperoxidase enzyme, and thyroglobulin are present in most cases of Graves' disease. Measurement of TSH receptor antibodies to determine the etiology. To determine the etiology, we do the measurement of TSH receptor antibody. Then needle aspiration of the thyroid nodule in selected cases. High urinary as well as serum calcium and phosphate will be there. Urinary and serum calcium will be high. Raised SGPT, especially ALT, alkaline phosphate, bilirubin, and glycosuria will be there. In 5% patients of thyrotoxicosis, T3 thyrotoxicosis, serum T3 is much raised, but T4 remains in the upper limit of the normal. This is known as T3 thyrotoxicosis. Increased basal metabolic rate is also characteristic of fever and pheochromocytoma. What are the three conditions in which you find the increased basal metabolic rate? You will say thyrotoxicosis, fever, pheochromocytoma. Here the basal metabolic rate is increased. Three conditions: thyrotoxicosis, fever, and pheochromocytoma. Basal metabolic rate is increased. Now the question comes about this: what are the differences between Graves' disease and toxic nodular goiter? Toxic nodular goiter. What are the differences? First of all, the age of presentation of Graves' disease is less than 35 years, while if it is toxic nodular goiter, it is more than 35 years. Then goiter will be smooth, diffuse enlargement will be there. Here will be nodular enlargement. Here will be diffuse enlargement will be there in Graves' disease. Then onset of symptoms with the goiter. The symptoms occurs with goiter. Here the goiter occurs first goiter followed by symptom. Here symptoms occur with goiter, but here before first goiter and then the symptoms occur in toxic nodular goiter. Then eye signs will be present. Eye signs will be present in Graves' disease, while it will be absent or rare in toxic nodular goiter. Then cardiac symptoms will be slight. Here there will be mild cardiovascular symptoms. Here will be severe. Toxic nodular goiter will be severe cardiovascular symptoms. Then neuromuscular symptoms will be more prominent here. Neuromuscular symptoms more prominent here. Here will be slight. Here will be slight neuromuscular symptoms. Then other autoimmune diseases common here. Common autoimmune disease here, it is uncommon. So what are the features of diffuse and toxic nodular goiter? Diffuse goiter, the symptoms occur with goiter. In toxic nodular goiter, first goiter, then symptoms. Eye signs, diffuse goiter, there will be green Graves' disease, eye signs will be more, there will be absent eye signs. Then mild cardiovascular system is in Graves, while there will be severe cardiovascular symptom in nodular goiter, toxic nodular goiter. Then neuromuscular symptoms will be more prominent in Graves' disease, while neuromuscular symptom is less prominent in toxic nodular goiter. And autoimmune disease are common in Graves' disease, while it is uncommon in toxic nodular goiter. Now briefly outline the management of thyrotoxicosis. Now we'll discuss the management of thyrotoxicosis. So how will you manage a case of thyrotoxicosis? First of all, we have the antithyroid drug, the propylthiouracil, 100 to 200 mg 6 to 8 hourly. We give 100 to 200 mg 6 to 8 hourly. Then we have the carbimazole, methimazole, iodide and potassium perchlorate is used. Not only propylthiouracil, we have the carbimazole, methimazole, iodide or potassium perchlorate. Is used. These drugs inhibit the formation of thyroid hormones. While diminishing the toxicity, these drugs increase the size and vascularity of the gland. Carbimazole is commonly used drug. Then we have this radioactive iodine, that is 131, usually 5 to 15 millicurie of iodine 131 is given orally and may be repeated at 12 weeks. So indication for giving the radioactive iodine are all patients should be over 40 years. So I am talking about the radioactive iodine 131. So where you are going to give this? All patients should be over 40 years. You can give this radioactive iodine. Then toxicity due to drugs or relapse after surgery. If the drug failure occur or relapse occur or toxicity occur from these drugs, then you will give the radioactive iodine 131. Then contraindication for giving the radioactive iodine is pregnancy and lactation. In pregnancy and lactation, antithyroid drug is the best choice. So you are not going to give it in pregnant lady and lactating lady. Then surgery is done in patients who with relapse after drug therapy. We will go for subtotal or near total thyroidectomy. Surgery is done in patients with relapse after drug therapy. It is done in total or subtotal thyroidectomy. General measure you will going to take like good nutritious diet. Propranolol dosage up to 160 mg may need higher doses may be given. Propranolol antagonizes the sympathomimetic manifestation and thus it alleviates palpitation, tremor, sweating, lid retraction. Propranolol is contraindicated in congestive cardiac failure, heart block, bronchial asthma, peripheral vascular disease, and diabetes. So, what are the contraindication of beta blocker? So, you are not going to give propranolol in patient with congestive cardiac failure, in patients with asthma, in patients with peripheral vascular disease, in patients with the diabetes mellitus, and in patients with heart block you are not going to give this propranolol. Is contraindicated in congestive cardiac failure, asthma, peripheral vascular disease, diabetes, heart block. You are not going to give propranolol. Then comes the thyroid eye disease. For thyroid eye disease, low salt diet and diuretics. For thyroid eye disease, यानी आई की मैनिफेस्टेशन भी हो रहा था ग्रेव्स में, सो यू विल गिव द लो साल्ट डाइट एंड डायूरेटिक्स विद एलिवेशन ऑफ द हेड एंड एट नाइट टू रिड्यूस द ऑर्बिटल एडिमा. Smoking should be stopped. Tinted glass with the side frames to protect the eyes from the sun, wind, and dust to reduce the lacrimation. The eyelids can be tapped at night. 1% methyl cellulose and hypromellulose eye drops or lubrication can be used. Prednisolone 30 to 120 mg per day with or without cyclosporin in malignant exophthalmosis you can give. Then external irradiation or lateral torsorrhaphy to prevent exposure keratitis. Then orbital decompression or corrective eye muscle surgery rarely you can give. For dermopathy or peridermal myxedema, hyaluronidase or triamcinolone intralesional injections you can give. Then topical high potency corticosteroid with occlusive dressing you can use. Then ultraviolet radiation. That octreotide is being tried recently. Then exophthalmosis does not necessarily decrease after the successful treatment of thyrotoxicosis. Exophthalmosis does not necessarily decrease. Then thyrotoxicosis with atrial fibrillation, more in the elderly with toxic nodular goiter. Propranolol, amiodarone, antithyroid drug, anticoagulant, cardioversion are of the mode of therapy if the patient develops the thyrotoxicosis with atrial fibrillation. So what are the drugs you are going to give a patient with thyrotoxicosis become atrial fibrillation? You will do the rate control with propranolol, then for rhythm control amiodarone, then you will control the underlying thyroid disease with antithyroid drugs. You can do the anticoagulants and cardioversion may be needed as the mode of therapy. How carbimazole is given? Now the question is comes how carbimazole is given. How you give carbimazole? So you have to say that usual dose of carbimazole 10 to 20 mg, usually 2 to 3 times daily till the patient becomes euthyroid. You have to give the carbimazole till the patient becomes euthyroid. Usually the patient becomes euthyroid in 6 to 8 weeks and the maintenance dose is then started as 10 to 15 milligram per day for about 12 to 18 months, that is 1 to 1.5 year. You will give the maintenance dose of 10 to 15 mg per day. The maintenance dose is determined by the measurement of T4 and TSH. T4 and TSH are used for the deciding the maintenance dose of carbimazole. Side effects of carbimazole is agranulocytosis. Note it down. Granulocytosis is the side effect of carbimazole. Patient complaints of sore throat or fever. In agranulocytosis, patient will complain of sore throat and fever. Then the side effects like drug rash, drug sensitivity, hepatitis, drug fever, arthralgia. These are other manifestations of carbimazole. You only know agranulocytosis, but you should add in your mind that drug rash, hepatitis can also occur with carbimazole. Leukopenia or agranulocytosis is the most dangerous complication of antithyroid drugs. If the absolute neutrophil count goes less than 1500 per millimeter cube of blood, then antithyroid medication should be discontinued. At what level of neutrophil count you will discontinue the antithyroid medication? If the neutrophil count goes less than 1500 per millimeter cube of blood, you will discontinue your antithyroid drug. You will discontinue your antithyroid drug will be discontinued if the neutrophil count goes less than 1500 per millimeter of cube. Then uses of beta blockers in internal medicine. Remember the indication from head to foot. Uses of Beta blockers, uses of beta blockers in internal medicine. So first is anxiety state you will use, in migraine you will use as prophylaxis, in glaucoma, chronic open angle glaucoma you will use, then thyrotoxicosis you will use, then prevention of variceal bleed, portal hypertension you will use, then cardiovascular system, systemic hypertension, angina pectoris, stable as well as unstable, myocardial infarction, cardiac arrhythmias, especially tachyarrhythmias, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, mitral valve prolapse syndrome, dissection of aorta, cyanotic spells of Fallot's teratology, essential tremor, pheochromocytoma, then alcohol withdrawal syndrome. So from top to bottom, first brain anxiety you can use in anxiety, and in migraine you can use anxiety migraine you can use, then in eyes glaucoma will you can use in glaucoma, beta blocker you use in glaucoma also, then in thyrotoxicosis you will use, then you will use in thyrotoxicosis, then in the variceal bleed for prophylaxis of portal hypertension, for prophylaxis of variceal hemorrhage you will use, then in cardiovascular system you will use, in systemic hypertension, in angina you will use, systemic hypertension you will use, in myocardial infarction you will use, in cardiac arrhythmias especially tachyarrhythmias may you will use, in tachyarrhythmia you will use, then hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy you will use, then mitral valve prolapse syndrome you will use, then dissection of aorta you will use, then cyanotic spells in Fallot's teratology may you will use, then you will also use these beta blockers in essential tremor, you will use in essential tremor, and you will also use in pheochromocytoma, and you will also use in alcohol withdrawal syndrome, you will use in essential tremor, pheochromocytoma, and alcohol withdrawal syndrome. So these are the uses of beta blockers in internal medicine. Then thyroid storm or thyrotoxic crisis. What is thyroid storm? They can ask, what is thyroid storm? What is thyroid storm? So thyroid storm, it is an extreme degree of hyperthyroid state precipitated by surgery, infection, severe stress, and double spondyl in patients with hyperthyroidism. It is an extreme degree of hyperthyroid state precipitated by surgery, infection, severe stress, and double spontaneous in patient with hyperthyroidism. The patient usually suffer from abrupt onset of restlessness, delusion, hyperpyrexia, delirium, tachyarrhythmias, hypertension, vomiting, diarrhea, and often coma, and may come from heart failure, arrhythmias, and hyperpyrexia. It is managed urgently in the ICU with IV sodium iodide or oral Lugol's iodine with oral propylthiouracil, dexamethasone, propranolol, and correction of the water and electrolyte imbalance are key importance. So what is thyroid storm or thyrotoxicosis state? It is an extreme degree of hyperthyroid state precipitated by surgery, infection, severe stress, or developed spontaneously in patients with hyperthyroidism. It is an extreme degree of, basically it is an extreme degree of hyperthyroid state, and there will be features like that of patients suffer from abrupt onset of restlessness, there will be delusions, there will be hyperpyrexia, there will be delirium, delusion, hyperpyrexia, tachyarrhythmias, hypotension, vomiting, diarrhea, and often coma, and may come from heart failure, arrhythmias, and hyperpyrexia. तो होता क्या इसमें, हार्ट फेलियर होता है, एरिथमियाज होते हैं, हाइपोटेंशन होता है, heart failure, arrhythmias, hyperpyrexia. So these are the features which we'll see when there is an extreme form of hyperthyroidism. It is usually managed, should be managed in the ICU. ICU setting mein we have to treat the thyroid storm with IV sodium iodide, oral Lugol's iodine, with the oral propylthiouracil, dexamethasone, propranolol. Correction of water and electrolyte disturbances are of also importance. Then identification point of thyrotoxicosis. What are the identification points of thyrotoxicosis? So goiter with exophthalmosis is the first clue. The patient looks anxious, restless, fidgety. Now examine for tremors and trachea. First you will see the goiter and exophthalmosis, gives the first clue. Then you will examine for tremors and tachycardia. Never forget to examine the jerks. Never forget to examine the jerks. Then if thyrotoxicosis is given as a long case, examine the patient in the following way: general survey, especially nutrition, faces, neck glands, pulse, BP, skin, appendages. You will see, examine the thyroid gland and eye. Systemic examination, you will do the cardiovascular system examination, nervous system examination, GI system examination, respiratory system examination. First of all, cardiovascular, then nervous, then GI, then respiratory, then reticuloendothelial system examination. Hyperthyroidism indicates glandular hypertrophy of the gland, while thyrotoxicosis is the increased circulating free thyroid hormones along with toxic feature. Then heat intolerance is a common general symptom of hyperthyroidism. Then endocrine emergency in clinical practice are thyroid storm, myxedema, coma, thyroid storm, pituitary apoplexy, adrenal crisis, Nelson syndrome. Read the section on diabetes mellitus for diabetic emergencies. So what are the emergencies endocrine? You know thyroid storm, you know, then myxedema, coma, pituitary apoplexy, adrenal crisis, Nelson syndrome. Read the section on diabetic emergencies. So this is about the examination of thyroid.